笑い続けていれば、いつか幸せになれると信じてきた。誰かのことを思えば、相手も自分を思ってくれると信じてきた。悲しかった思い出を置き去りにして、少女は明日を見つめようと前を向く。甘えず、頼らず、たった一人で未来を切り開くために。その先にあるものは幸せか、それとも不幸せか。罪滅ぼし。誰かを愛したかった。でも本当は誰かに愛されたかった。
はい、いらっしゃいませ。特製のフランクフルトはいかがですか。あよ。シロップはイチゴにメロンにブルーハワイがあるよ。おみくじたこ焼きいかがですか。あたりにはマスタードがげっしり。
There are a great many booths at this year's Watanagashi festival. Anything can become a festival if there are vendors selling food and music for bond dances, I thought. It's still June, but it had been extremely hot these past few days, almost as if it was already summer. When you have a June festival with bond dance music under this kind of weather, the only thing that's missing is to make it a perfect summer festival. The only thing that's missing to make it a perfect summer festival is fireworks. Kuma. I heard a voice coming from my... What? We get to play as Ooishi? I heard a voice coming from my portable radio. With this earphone, it looks a little like I'm secretly listening to horse races while on duty. Excuse me?
Ooishi desu.
What?
Kando ryoko.
What? We get... What? We get to play as Ooishi or see things from his perspective. That all sounds so delicious.
その麦茶、勤務中に飲める麦茶？飲めない麦茶？その麦茶、缶ならもらっといてください。コップなら辞退でお願いします。
はい、了解です。それと、紹介役員が挨拶に来てます。村長と、あと、園崎家の方からも。
Really?
お寮のばあさま？やだな。大石は巡回中でいつ戻ってくるかわからないとか言ってごまかせません？
She's looking right at me, sir. Please come back.
あのばあさま、死ぬときは絶対脳梗塞ですね。了解了解。すぐに戻ると丁重にですよ。お伝えください。
Oh well, I guess I'll have to go back and mingle with the locals. All of a sudden, a group of kids came running towards me from behind. After a quick look at them, I noticed that they were the granddaughter of the old bag and her friends. Are they all like super close up? No, thought they would be. They occupied a corner of the shooting gallery stall, making a lot of noise. Miyo Sonozaki. When acting her age, she's a cute, normal girl. But do I ever hate it when she acts like a member of the Sonozaki family? She'll be the boss of the Okinomiya Yakuza territory in 10 or 20 years, just you wait and see. And while I was thinking things like that, I noticed that Mion wasn't the only one taking leadership of her group this time. It was the boy. That boy. I know him. He just moved here recently. The boy from the Maebara mansion. Keiichi Maebara, was it? I heard that the Maebara family is from the city and that they're supposed to be very rich too. But he doesn't flaunt his family wealth, and he has a good reputation because of that. Even though he just moved here, he's already adjusted to his new school, and he's popular with his classmates too. Everyone in the village seems to like him as well. He's very interesting to watch, as a person of many moods. Boys of his age sure have a lot of energy. Ah, to be young again.
おい次はレナだぜ。ここでレナはかなり美味しいタイミングだぜ。
大丈夫レナ？具合悪いんじゃないの？
ごめん。ちょっと射的は横で見てたいかな。なら、無理をしないで休んでいるといいのです。では、
Weird.
レナさんを飛ばして、ここでいよいよ真打ち。
Because Rena right now would be in cute mode. Because she saw Rika in her kimono. Or not kimono, I forget what the priest attire was called. Or priestess attire was called. And I know I asked this question last time, I got an answer, but I'm already forgetting. Anyway, because she saw Rika dressed as a shrine maiden in her official garb. And that caused Rena to just lose it. And then Keiichi showed her something in secret behind the bushes that she found incredibly cute, and it was like a keychain that he made. And she found it adorable. So normally by this point, Rena would be in cute mode, she would see a giant teddy bear that she wants, and she'd be going crazy trying to get it. But now she's all downtrodden and melancholy and
私の出番でございましてよ。
not herself. It looked like only 4 of them were having a good time. The girl called Rena seemed outside of that circle of smiles. Her name is Rena Ryugu. What was her real name? I couldn't remember, but I can check when I get back to the station. Rena is only a nickname. I believe she moved here a year before Mayabara-kun did. Her mother divorced her father, or something like that. She's a strong girl who does all the housework by herself. She's a very modest girl, I'm told, which is rare in this era. Unlike Mayabara, it seems like she hadn't really opened up to her friends just yet. Oh, I see. They look like a group of 5, but there's a distance between her and the others. It's a little sad, you know? Mayabara has become a part of the village, but Rena is still by herself. Well, that's just how it looks to me. Right.
所長と課長がお見えっす。大至急お戻りになってください。
おいし了解。地域のお祭りにまで挨拶に来るなんて、うちの所長は地域交流に豆だな。沖宮の祭りに来たって話は聞いたことないのに。
ああ、こちら高杉です。大石さん聞こえますか？どうぞ。
はいはい、大石です。ただいま全速力で帰還中ですよ。もう1分ほどお待ちを。
If I don't hurry up, even the chief might end up calling me. I ran back to the headquarters tent. Oh, here they are. They meet up with the group of kids. Then everyone goes home for the night. And then here's the call.
先生が到着してます。
Yeah.
ああ、どうもどうも。どうですか、入江の先生。
Ooishi entered the cordoned off area. Why is this narrated from a third-person perspective? In there, people from forensics were taking pictures of the corpse from various angles. Irie was squatting down next to the dead body of Jiro Tomitake. When he stood up, he looked pale.
信じられません。
そりゃあ私だって信じられませんよ。初見で見た限り、仏は喉をかきむしっています。それも自分の手でです。こいつはまっとうな死に方じゃない。十中八九、何らかのヤバめな薬物でしょう。
彼は何らかの薬物の常習者だったということでしょうか。
さあね。そいつを調べるのはどうやら我々の仕事になりそうです。
大石さん、この角材は？
多分仏が振り回したんじゃないかと思います。で、途中で捨てて喉をかくのが楽しくなっちゃったんじゃないかと。
角材を何のために振り回したんでしょう。
自衛のためと考えるのが一番自然だと思います。仏の体に外傷がいくつかあるのに気づいてます？
ええ、打撲傷を思わせる跡がいくつか散見できます。
ってことは一番考えられるストーリーは、仏が祭り終了後沖宮へ帰る途中、ここで何者かに襲われた。それで取り押さえられて怪しげな注射とかそういうのをされて、その結果錯乱させられて死に至らしめられた。
喉をかきむしるように誘導できる薬物なんて。
私もそっちは専門じゃありませんが、薬物中毒の一つに自傷行為ってあるらしいじゃないですか。まあその辺はうちの鑑識のじいさまが調べてくれるでしょう。
おいさん、失礼します。ここから数百メートルのところに富武二郎のものと思われる自転車が見つかりました。
お、そうですか。ありがとうございます。何か手がかりとかは？
いえ、初見では特には。今鑑識が言っています。
じゃあ、つまりその自転車があった場所が襲撃場所と考えていいんでしょうね。それで戦ったり逃げたりしてここまで来た。
Ooishi frowned, crossing his arms in front of his chest. Iria was looking at the miserable corpse of Tomitake, and he kept saying the same thing over and over.
ありえない。絶対にありえない。
先生、ありえちゃったんだから仕方がないです。発想を柔軟にしましょう。まあ先生でもこんな死体はなかなか見慣れてるものじゃないか。先生はもう結構ですよ。お帰りになられて十分休んでください。救命活動でお呼びしたはずだったんですが、無駄足になってしまって申し訳ないです。
Ooishi stuck his head out of the blue tent and asks, "Can anybody give him a ride home?" Iria gasped all of a sudden as he turned to Ooishi.
そうだ。高野さんはどうなったんです？
お宅の看護師さんの？
多分富武さんと一緒だったと思うんです。高野さんは無事なんですか？
先生、彼女の電話番号はわかります？
もちろんです。
熊ちゃん、入江の先生に電話番号を聞いて署から在宅確認を取らせてください。
了解っす。先生、番号。
はい、よろしいですか
Umagai got the phone number from Iria, repeated it back, and then dashed away from the blue tarps.
先生、高野さんと仏は確か親しい仲でしたよね。
ええ。
何かトラブルがあったとか、そういうのは聞いたことがあります？
まさか。聞いたことないです。仲のいい二人でした。
何事もなけりゃいいんですがね。下手すりゃ仏か、それとも星か。なるほど。看護師なら怪しげな薬物を取り扱えてもおかしくはないですよね。
そんな薬品はうちの診療所にはありませんし、あったとしても厳重に保管されています。高野さんに持ち出せるわけがない。
それでも一般人よりは容易でしょ。
ですからそもそもそんな薬物は聞いたことがないし、当診療所にも存在しません。
大石さん、留守のようです。署の待機組の方で直接訪問すると言ってます。
I mean, realistically, at this point, I get that they're trying to contact Takano, right? Who is missing, as far as they know. But you have to remember that the festival ended like 30 minutes ago. Tomitake was found dead, and I don't believe you can get home in 30 minutes. That's assuming she went straight home. Because you'll have, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a little bit of traffic in the mountain. People from Okinawa coming over, they're all leaving at the same time. And we know Takano drove here. She drove here and she had enough space in the back of her car for both her bike and Tomitake's. So, we'll see what happens, but
先生、
just
す
something
み
to
ま
keep
せ
in
ん
the back
が
of your head.
高野さんの住所を教えてください。
熊ちゃん、それプラス県警に今夜出た身元不明の女性死体がないか確認を取ってください。あるいは県外の可能性もあるんだ。課長に近県にも同様に身元不明の女性死体が出ていないか確認を取るよう伝えてください。
了解っす。
高野さんも殺されているということですか？
さてどうでしょうね。まだガイシャとも星とも決まったわけじゃありません。もちろん無関係って可能性だって残ってます。明日は月曜だってのも構わず、その辺の飲み屋で飲んだくれてる可能性もありますからね。
信じられない。どうしてこんなことが。
まあ私だって信じられないです。ひなみ沢村連続開始事件、これで5年目ですよ。お社様のたたりが5連続ってことになっちまいます。くそ、なんとか今年で尻尾をつかんでやりたいな。定年前にこの山だけはなんとか片付けたいんです。
Sorry. Ooishi hates the curse of Oyashiro-sama. It had been leading him around by the nose for 5 consecutive years. The victim of the first year, the manager of the damn construction site, was his friend. Despite his right, it was the guy that he played mahjong with. Despite his desire to avenge his friend, the mystery had only deepened, and one case followed another year after year. Ooishi would be retiring next March. As a retiree, he'd be able to ask about the progress of the investigation, but he wouldn't be able to take the initiative anymore. In other words, this year was his last chance for revenge. Would he have to put his head in the lion's mouth to capture the culprit? Ooishi quietly clenched his fist. I believe that this maze has an exit. Maze is a very convenient word. A maze always has an exit. You don't call it a maze if it doesn't have one. I know I'm on the right path towards the exit of this maze. I used to miss these minor divergences, but now I don't miss anything. I don't make any mistakes. This time I could feel a response that was different than all the other times. I'm sure I can finally get to the exit of this maze. But no matter which path I choose to come to this point, Jiro Tomitake always dies. This time I could feel a response that was different than all the other times. I'm sure I can finally get in it. What does he mean by this? What does he mean by no matter which path I choose to come to this point, Jiro Tomitake always dies? Does Ooishi know something we don't? Rena had been sick ever since that day, and she hadn't been able to join in on club activities as often since.
まだちょっと風邪っぽいの。そうでございますの。それは残念ですわね。
なあレナ、たまにはパーッとはしゃいでみないか？多分元気に遊べば吹っ飛ばせると思うんだよ俺は。
そうだね。それはおじさんも同感だね。
そうかな。横になっている方がかえって毒になることもありますです。そうですわよね。病は気からとも言いますですわ。
Everybody everybody had suspected for a while that Rena isn't really sick. It's just that many things happened to her at once. She caught a mental cold. That's why I thought she would get better once she played with us just like we used to. It seemed like Rena was aware of that too. She knew that she had to get out of her state of depression soon. She wanted to get better, and she wanted to have fun again every day.
よし、私も参加する。
オッケー。そうこなくっちゃね。じゃあ今日はレナの病み上がりも少し加味してテーブルゲームから種目をチョイスしよう。何がいいかな。
Mion started rummaging through her locker, humming to herself. She took one game after another from the locker and put them aside. That locker definitely didn't obey the laws of physics. The amount of games she shook out from the locker was more than it could physically hold.
お、こんなのもあったね。久しぶりにやってみようか。今日は本格派推理ゲームでいこう。
ほう、なんだよそれ、面白そうだな。
犯人と凶器、犯行現場の3つを当てるゲームなの。結構頭を使うんだよ。
一度やればすぐに覚えてしまいます。ちゃんとメモに整理していけば大丈夫なのです。情報の整理にはちょっとしたコツがありますのよ。知的な私の最も得意とするジャンルでございますわね。
The rules don't seem that difficult. In short, it's a game where you sound out the cards each player holds in order to try to reason out the identity of the cards first drawn out of the deck. There are plenty of games in different formats where you try to identify something hidden in the least number of steps. This one just happens to be a competitive one of those. The key to winning this game would be how well you can organize your information. We usually like to play athletic games so that we can run around a lot, but in our club, you have to excel both academically and athletically.
よしよしよし、なんだか面白くなってきやがった。やろうぜ。レナ、今日こそ曖昧になってるあの水鉄砲勝負の時の白黒をつけてやる。
そうだね。よーし、レナも本気で行くからね。レナが本気なら僕も本気を出さないといけませんです。ですわね。あの水鉄砲の一件以来、ケイイチさんとレナさんの評価を改めましてよ。容赦なく行かせていただきますわ。
よしよし、盛り上がってきたね。おじさんもこういう暑さを期待してたんだよ。よし、行ってみよう。
よし行くぜ。俺がナイフで書斎はどうだ？
あるよ。レナはね、ケイイチくん毒薬で玄関ホールだよ。私はこれですわね。ミオンピストルラウンジですわ。
ピストルはあんたが持ってるんでしょ。下手なフェイクは意味ないよ。
犯人と凶器は特定できたと思います。犯行現場が2択なのです。はあ、リカちゃんも？私は犯人が2択で特定できない。コツは相手の質問内容からも何かのヒントを得ることですのよ。それが分かれば時には相手の手札で答えが分かることもありましたよ。
なるほどな。くそ、甘く見てたか。やべえ、メモがぐちゃぐちゃで意味が分からなくなった。
メモに書き取るコツが分かればこのゲームは7割方攻略したも同然だね。ま、7割程度じゃおじさんには勝てないけどさ。
I kind of knew I didn't stand a chance of winning this game, but I gradually started picking it up. Rena seemed to be getting her energy back as she played along. It was the right decision to force her to play with us today. While we were in the middle of the game, Chia-sensei came into the classroom.
楽しそうですね。ところで竜宮さんはいますか？竜宮さんにお客様が来ています。
The music stopped. It's Ooishi, isn't it? Everybody looked puzzled. Parents sometimes showed up at school for some reason, but Chia-sensei never called them visitors. It's rare to have a visitor at school.
なんだろう。ちょっと行ってくるね。みんなは部活続けててね。
Rena left the classroom at a run.
どうする？待ってるか？
どれだけかかる用事かわからないからね。レナもああ言ってたことだし、私たちは続けようか。
ああ
Around the entrance, the glaring sun and the cool shade made for a clear contrast. An old man who was holding his jacket on his arm was waiting for me. He looked like he was overheating, and his tie was limp.
竜宮さんですか。竜宮レイナさん。
Ever since Rena called me Rena, I've hated that name more than ever. Because of that, I don't have a good first impression of this man.
そうですよ。どちら様ですか？
私の車はエアコンが効いてますから、そっちでお話ししましょう。
Immediately. Without missing a beat. Hey, I've got AC in my car. What if we just stop by there real quick?
ここ暑くありません？
He ignored my question and started walking towards the car parked in front of the school gate. If he wanted to talk about something normal, he would have used the teacher's office. But he wanted to talk in his car instead, so I couldn't help but feel suspicious. Chia-sensei let him see me, though. That meant he wasn't a suspicious individual as far as she was concerned. Who was he?
取って食いやしません。どうぞどうぞ。
He called out to me while opening the rear door. Is he a policeman? Did the police find out that I killed those two? Oh no. I felt anxious all of a sudden. Was this what they called a voluntary interview? I didn't want to go into the car, but if I rejected his offer, it'd only make me look suspicious. I prepared myself and got in. It was really cool inside the car. A car AC must cost a fortune. At least my father's car doesn't have one.
冷えすぎだったら言ってくださいよ。私ガンガンに冷やしちゃうたちですから。
で、私に何の用ですか？
In retaliation, I ignored his question and got to the point like he did. He pulled a small notebook out of his breast pocket and flipped through it. He picked out a photo from it. The photo showed the face of a goofy-looking
この
man.
男性のことでご存知のことがあったら教えてください。
The man in the picture was expressionless and looked half asleep. Sometimes you can't even recognize your own family members in a photo where they don't have an expression. So there's no way I could recognize a person who wasn't related to me. But anyway, that was a bit of a relief. This had nothing to do with Rena or her partner.
シャツにマジックで落書きがありましてね。竜宮さんをはじめクラスメート何人かの署名入りでした。
これ、富武さん？
I don't feel his usual carefree unreliableness from this picture at all. From this half-awake and motionless face.
では、こちらの女性はわかりますか？
I knew what he was
ミヨ
going
さ
to
ん
show.
です。高野ミヨさん。
二人に最後に会ったのはいつですか？
綿流しの祭りのお開きになった直後くらいにあったと思います。
何か気になったこととかありませんか？何でも結構です。話してください。
富武さんたちに何かあったんですか？
よっしゃー取った。実はよ、レナとミオンで二択だったんだよな。
じゃあ博打だったんですの？なんてリスクのあることを。それでも勝ちは勝ちなのですよ。
お、レナだ。おかえり。ずいぶん時間かかったね。
Miyo noticed that Rena had returned. She looked exhausted. I have no idea what she talked about with the visitor, but it was obvious it wasn't something fun.
レナ、大丈夫？
何大丈夫って。
いや、顔色だよ。青いというか、白いというか。本当に大丈夫？
Rena tried to convince us that she was fine, but her face clouded over for a moment and she decided to leave early. I shouldn't have forced her to join the game. I was regretting it a little. Rena probably forced herself to play with us, even though she wasn't feeling well at all. Rena put her stuff in her bag, apologized to us for leaving early, and left the classroom.
まあ仕方ありませんわね。ではせめて私たちの白黒ははっきりさせようじゃございませんの。
そうだね。次は誰の番だっけ？
よっしゃ、リカちゃん。来やがれ！
This text is a different color, isn't it? Or... hold on. Let me double check. It looks pink, but I'm not sure if it really is. So I'm just gonna quickly... Okay, it is pink. So this is still Rena. Sorry, it's just like, at least from my end, with the like colorful background, it looks a little orange-ish, but it is actually pink. First of all, I wasn't really close to Miyo-san. I knew who she was, so I greeted her whenever we happened to pass by. But that was about it. I never really talked to her except for that one time. And that time was only recently. It was between the day of the Watanagashi festival and the day I was caught in the act of burying the 2 corpses by Keiichi and my other friends. I had a phone call from the library that evening and I was told that my father needed to return the book that he borrowed. He was shopping at the home improvement store at the time, so I went to the library to return the book for him. While I was there, I thought about borrowing some books for myself and I started walking around the library. I saw her there.
あら、レナちゃんじゃないかしら。こんにちは。
ミオさん、どうもこんにちは。図書館で会うなんて珍しいですね。
そう？私にとってみれば、あなたが図書館にいることの方が珍しいんだけどね。
She smiled in a very attractive and charming way that only mature women can do. Her smile gave no indication that she knew her death was just a few days away. She said that she often met with Tomitake at the library. It seemed like she had some time to kill, so she told me she wanted to buy me a drink. I had nothing to do after that. I let her buy me a canned iced milk tea from the vending machine in the library and we talked for a while. Once I came to think about it, it was a little ironic. She mostly talked about the series of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa. She had no idea that she was going to be a victim of its 5th year.
連続開始事件ですか？
あら、聞いたことくらいあるでしょ。4年前にはダムの現場監督。3年前には北条夫妻。2年前には古出夫妻。そして去年は聡子ちゃんのおばが犠牲になったひなみ沢村連続開始事件よ。それがあと何日かで5年目を迎えるじゃない？
一応私もそういう物騒な名前で呼ばれていることは知ってますけど、でも5年目も起こると決まったわけじゃ。
起こるわよ。絶対にね。 2度あることは3度あるってことわざがあるけど、4度あることは5度あるって方がもっと確率は高いとは思わない？
Miyo was convinced that the fifth mysterious death was going to happen, but she didn't know she was going to be the fifth victim. It's ironic and also really creepy. But there was always something creepy about her. So maybe she knew that she was going to be killed in a few days, but still managed to make that that mysterious smile. The series of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa. Of course I know about it. I've lived here for more than a year. Every year on the day of the Watanagashi festival, one traitor to the village dies mysteriously. It's been that way since the dam conflict. Each case was solved individually, but mysterious incidents still happen every year. It makes me wonder if there's some kind of will to all of this. The creepiness and incomprehensibility of it all gave rise to the name, the Curse of Oyashiro-sama, which fits perfectly. Despite this, I always thought the Curse of Oyashiro-sama was just a series of coincidences. My reason for that is because I strongly believe that Satoshi was the one who murdered his aunt on the 4th year. I don't have any evidence, but I just know it. I know that Satoshi was in a serious predicament last year, and that he had nowhere to turn. He had no one to help him, but he had to save Satoko as soon as he could. Satoshi thought it through and made the best choice he could to handle the situation, just like I did when I had my problem with Rena. I hesitated to inform Miyo that Satoshi was the murderer on the 4th year, so I just listened to her for a while. According to her theory, the series of mysterious deaths isn't just a set of coincidences, but instead a series of interrelated murder cases. Interrelated, I mean. At that point, my theory was completely the opposite of hers, but I decided not to cut in.
南沢のお社様信仰は知ってるわよね。
The cult? Wait, there's officially like the actual cult? Takano started telling me that Hinamizawa was once called Onigafuchi. She also explained the story of how the villagers were in the old days, showing me the scrapbook she was so proud of. The villagers back then were called man-eating ogres, but they were also admired as transcendent, enlightened people not bound by earthly desires.
つまり、ミヨさんの説によるならば、連続開始事件はお社様を崇拝する狂信的団体が南沢に潜んでいて、お社様の力を世に示そうとしていると。
狂信的というか、原理主義的というかは紙一重だけどね。明治以降、村の名前が南沢に変わって以来、鬼ヶ淵村が長く続けてきたさまざまな風習が途絶えている。それをよみがえらせ、再び鬼ヶ淵村の名と威風を取り戻そうと思っている人たちがいるんじゃないかしら。
Miyo's theory was more than a little crazy, but it was also fascinating. At first her theory had sounded like she was just jumping to conclusions, but after she eagerly showed me the document she'd been studying, I started to think it wasn't actually too far from the truth. If her theory was true, it would mean that the accidental deaths of the Hojo couple in the 2nd year, the suicide and death by disease of the Furude couple in the 3rd year, and the drug addict murder in the 4th year were all cooked up. It means someone who has a lot of power and influence over the police was involved. When I pointed that out, Miyo nodded in agreement. She started talking about how strongly they were rooted in the village and how deeply they were involved with many public organizations. After she finished explaining all of that, I finally noticed that Miyo was suggesting that the 3 families, including the Sonosuke family, were the masterminds behind the murder incidents. In fact, the Sonosuke family really is powerful. They hold influence not only over Hinamizawa and Okinomiya, but also the entire Shishibone area. It might not be wrong to say that they hold influence over the entire prefecture. If the Sonosuke family is behind all of this, her theory would be more realistic. But that means I should be suspicious of Mi-chan. No, I shouldn't. But in fact, Mi-chan was very cold when he was going through a tough time. I know there was a conflict between the Sonosuke family and the Hojo family during the Dam Wars, but still she was very cold to Satoshi. But Mi-chan had admitted that what she did was wrong, and I forgave her too. I didn't want to think about that again. I decided to change the subject because I knew it'd make me feel uncomfortable if we kept talking about the Sonosuke family.
そもそもお社様信仰って一体何なんでしょうね。鬼と人が共存というのも面白い話です。普通の昔話だったら鬼が来たら退治してやっつけるという風なのに。
そうね。そのあたりがお社様信仰の面白いところね。でもそもそも神の国から神が漂着してきて崇められるというのは決して珍しいことではないのよ。漂着神崇拝って言ってね、世界中に海の向こうからあるいは川上から神が漂着してきて、それを人々が敬ったという類の神話が残されているわ。
それは偉人漂着の話でしょうか。
そういう捉え方も一般的ね。古代日本は大陸に比べると様々な文化が遅れていた。だから進んだ文化を持った異国人が漂着した結果、その知識を敬い神と祀ったというのは。
そういえば日本に伝わる赤鬼や青鬼もナンパして漂着した異国人のことを指すのではないかという説がありましたね。天狗のいわゆる真っ赤で鼻が異様に高い顔も欧米人を見慣れない古代の人々が作り上げたのかもしれないし。
Actually, yeah, I've heard about that too a little bit. Specifically about the Tengu. I'm not gonna talk too much into it. Or I'm not gonna talk too much about it. But if you were to look a little bit into like what Tengu are and what they do, maybe you might be able to connect some pieces to maybe what it might be referring to. Anyway.
あら、レナちゃんもなかなか鋭い見方ができるわね。
I'm pretty sure it was in one of the previous chapters that they talked about the blue and red Oni as well for a little bit.
それには私も同感よ。大方の漂着、私も偉人漂着にあると思うわ。でもそうだとすると、鬼ヶ淵村の鬼が現れたとする漂着神信仰にはちょっと不思議な点がある。わかるかしら？
わからないです。
簡単よ。鬼ヶ淵村には海がない。
It's adjacent to the mountains.
あ、確かに。
偉人漂着なら外の世界とつながる接点が欠かせないはずよ。欧米なら異国に通じる川、日本なら世界に接する海。だから日本における漂着神崇拝もそのほとんどは沿岸部に集中するわね。
鬼ヶ淵村以外に漂着し、そこから旅をしてここまでやってきた可能性はありませんか？
Or is she gonna refer to the swamp?
ところがお社様信仰の決定的なところは、
And speaking of,
鬼が漂着した場所を鬼ヶ淵沼とはっきり特定している点なの。
right.
鬼ヶ淵沼には何も流れ着かない。そんなところになぜどこから漂着した？実はこの辺にお社様信仰の謎を探る面白さがあるのよ。
Well, that's another interesting thing because land and land masses, just geographical locations change a lot over time, and I mean a lot. For example, you might not know this, but like 2,000 years ago, I believe it was, if not, it was a little bit longer than that, like 4,000 years ago. Most of northern Africa was like flooded. Well, not flooded, but it had very, very, very large lakes spanning across most of Africa, most of northern Africa. If you recall, like Egyptian mythology, they worship crocodiles a lot. Like there's a lot of crocodile gods. But if you think about it, there's only like one really major famous river in Africa, or at least in northern Africa, which is in Egypt, and that's the Nile. The Nile would probably be the only place where alligators would be located, right? But no, there used to be like I said, giant lakes in like north central Africa that used to be filled with giant alligators. And now it's kind of it's all dried up. in like the past 4,000 years, it's dried up. But it used to be connected directly to the ocean. Like there used to be a connection from Africa to the ocean. Like some parts of northern Africa were literally sunk underwater. So it could be that Onigafuchi swamp used to be connected possibly to some sort of landmass, or sorry, to some sort of body of water. And then over time, like either the mountains kind of grew a little bit, cutting that connection off, or something happened. At least that would be my guess. But anyway.
お社様の伝説はどの程度知ってるかしら？
学校に置いてある絵本で読んだ程度です。
I feel like I know a lot about it, but I actually don't. I just have an extreme fear of the rule not to leave Hinamizawa. After all, my life went wrong after I left. I felt dizzy when I tried to think about it further, so I stopped. When everything went wrong in Ibakari, I met Oyashiro-sama and he told me to go back to Hinamizawa. No, I'll get dizzy. Don't try to remember. Don't try to remember. I can't remember. I can't remember. I got desperate because I felt responsible for the divorce. I just used Oyashiro-sama as an excuse for my mental instability, and I told my father I wanted to go back to Hinamizawa. Right? But wait, Oyashiro-sama did come to me. Oh no, the colors are too dazzling. I can only remember the vivid colors of the pills and the dizziness.
それだけ知ってれば十分よ。鬼が淵より鬼が湧き出し、村人を襲った。
Yeah, that's where I thought she was gonna go with that little bit of information. Like, did you know that they came from the swamp? That's right, the ogres actually rose from the swamp.
それを見かねたお社様が降臨して、鬼たちを平服させたわ。鬼たちは地獄を追放され、行き場がないことを嘆き、それで村人たちは鬼たちを気の毒に思って村に住まわせてあげようと決めた。そしてお社様は村人たちの心に感銘を受け、鬼たちに人の姿を与え、村にその血は次第に交わり、村人たちに溶け込んでいった。
そうです。そういう話だったと思います。
I felt dizzy, like I was going to faint because I touched the one memory I didn't want to.
神話の多くは古代の何らかの事実を原型にしていると言われることが多いんだけど、レナちゃんはこの神話から何を読み取れるかしら？
Because I was still feeling dizzy, all I could do was tilt my head quizzically. It seemed like Miyo was expecting that response because she smiled, looking satisfied that she successfully made me confused. She took a scrapbook out of her paper bag.
これ、レナちゃんに貸してあげるわ。
The book. It's the book. It's the book from the tips in the last chapter, maybe? Or this is just generic book number 1.
ありがとうございます。でも私。
いいのよ。暇な夜長にでも思い出したら読んでくれれば結構。レナちゃんは鋭いところがあるみたいだから、それを読んだ上で、今度私も肯定的であれ、敵対的であれ、議論の相手がいなくて寂しいのよ。二郎さん、こういうのにはさっぱり興味のない人だし。
I had little choice but to take the scrapbook. Apparently, Miyo came to the library often, so I figured I could return it to her whenever I came to return my books. However, the day I returned the scrapbook to Miyo never came.
どうしたの？さっきからうつろね。体調悪いの？
あ、ちょっと夏風邪気味ね。まだ病み上がりなんです。
It wasn't the summer cold that was making me feel dizzy. I always get dizzy when I try to remember the time I met Oyashiro-sama in Ibaraki. I mustered all my courage and asked her. My memory of those days in Ibaraki is blurry. I know I met Oyashiro-sama. Nobody believed me and they told me that it was a hallucination. But I thought Miyo would listen to me.
ミオさん、 今度は私の話を聞いてもらってもいいですか？
いいわよ。聞いてもらったお返しに今度は私が聞くわ。
いえ、お社様の話なんです。笑われないかとても不安です。
笑わないわよ。
I thought they might have made her get closer. Just because now it piqued her interest.
あなたも私の話を笑わなかったもの。
Miyo said it in a very gentle and mature way that encouraged me. Even so, I still hesitated to talk, but there was probably nobody but Miyo with whom I could talk about something like this. I gathered my courage again and spoke.
私、お社様に会ったことがあるんです。
本当に？
はい。
Really? You met Oyashiro-sama?
私、小学校に上がる前まではひなみ沢に住んでいたんです。それが母の仕事の関係で茨城に引っ越したんです。この意味はわかりますよね？
わかるわよ。南沢を離れてはならないというお社様の禁忌に触れたということね。
そうです。それでいろいろ悪いことが起こって母が離婚し、私も自暴自棄になって悪いことをしたりしました。
辛いこともあったのね。それで？
世の中の何もかもが嫌になって、自分以外の幸せな人たち全部が私を見下しているように感じた最後の頃、不思議な存在が現れるようになったんです。
それがお社様？
初めて現れたのは内緒ですよ。全部嫌になって自分を壊してしまいたいと思って、体に刃物を突きつけたことがあったんです。その時、首をカミソリで切りつけたら、血に混じってブクブクと汚らしい何かが溢れ出したんです。それは、
バカにしないわよ。続けて。
The chill I felt at that time came back to me. I sealed that memory away so I wouldn't have to remember it ever again. But once I unsealed it, I started remembering things one after another. Yes, back then, there was something in the blood. Something crawling.
赤黒い無数のウジ虫だったんです。それらは首から血がこぼれるのと一緒にわらわらと湧き出してきました。しかもそいつらは外へ溢れまいと傷口から再び中へ戻っていこうとわらわらうごめいていたんです。私、そんな気持ち悪いのに体内に戻られたくなくって。でもそれ以上は痛くて血まみれになるばかりで、それで私は急に怖くなりました。私の体の中には血管いっぱいにあの気持ち悪いウジ虫がぎっしり詰まっているんじゃないかって。それで私は試しにカミソリでももの血管を開いてみました。そこならよく見えると思ったから。そしたら溢れてきたんです。ドバッとわらわらっと。
I understand, Ryugu. So please calm down.
分かってないんだわ。そのウジ虫たちは血と一緒にドバッと溢れ出すけど、すぐに元の血管の中に戻ろうとする。それがとてもかゆいんです。
Please bring a doctor. No, don't claw at it like that. Bring me a sedative. Hurry. Hold her down.
私の血管の中のウジ虫をやっつけて、血を全部抜いてきれいにして。
私の血管にはウジ虫がいっぱい詰まってるの。どうして信じないの？見せてあげるから。見れば信じるでしょ。注射は嫌。いや。
落ち着いて。
Instead of looking concerned or shocked or anything, Miyo is looking very smug. Also, I keep forgetting. Oh. Here she looks a little bit more quote-unquote concerned, but... Oh. Miyo sat next to me and held my hands tightly. Her touch brought me back to reality.
それでどうしたの？
そんな、誰も私のことを信じてくれないときに、お社様が。
The memory was very vague, and I saw flickering lights. It made it difficult for me to remember. I met Oyashiro-sama. That sentence is all I remembered. The memory of actually meeting him was unbelievably vague. After I got out of the hospital, I continued being treated at home. I still felt something moving in my veins, so I wanted to cut my body and make the blood ooze out so that I could make sure that there were no maggots in there. Usually, I was sleeping like the dead because of the strong pills I was taking, but one day I forgot to take the pill and my consciousness was very clear. I felt the maggots moving in my veins and I felt the urge to look inside. I cut a vein on my wrist. I knew it. A lot of blood and many dusky red maggots came out of the wound. I wanted to wash them off before they crawled back inside me, so I put my wrist under running water in the bathroom sink and I tried to open the vein. Water, blood, and maggots ran down into the drain. Just like squeezing out the pus from a pimple, I squeezed the vein to get rid of the dirty blood and the maggots. I kept doing it. My arms started to feel numb and I felt cold, but I kept doing it. I thought I might die from losing too much blood, but I kept doing it. My body was filled with maggots. I had to squeeze all my blood out of me. And then, a very bright light shone upon me. It was a very bizarre sensation. I had never experienced anything like it in my life. All of a sudden, the dark bathroom was filled with a bright light. It was very bright but gentle. It wasn't like the light from the merciless fluorescent bulb. It was very warm and gentle. That was Oyashiro-sama. Oyashiro-sama was looking at me with gentleness and sadness in his eyes. As he touched my wound, the maggots started melting and disappearing in front of my eyes. That wasn't all. All the maggots that were moving throughout my veins disappeared too. Oyashiro-sama taught me. These maggots were the curse. People of the ogre's blood can't live outside of Hinamizawa. It's the rule. Unfortunately, you've been cursed. It's very sad and I feel sorry for you. There is only one way to save you. That's what he said. What should I do? The answer was very simple. Return to Hinamizawa. I unconsciously knew that before I heard it from Oyashiro-sama. People who were born in Hinamizawa must never leave. But I broke Oyashiro-sama's rules and left behind Hinamizawa. That's when my family was broken and I lost my mind. If I hadn't left Hinamizawa, nothing would have gone wrong. And so I had to go back. Oyashiro-sama also told me this. He could make the maggots, the embodiment of the curse, disappear, but only temporarily because I lived far from Hinamizawa. After a while, the power of Oyashiro-sama would fade away, and the curse would start eating my body again. If that happened, the maggots would take over my body and I would go insane and die. I must go back to Hinamizawa, before his power to hold down the curse faded away. That's what Oyashiro-sama told me. He did. I heard him tell me that. I should have gone back to Hinamizawa earlier. That's why Oyashiro-sama came to me to put his curse on me. But he gave me a chance. He gave me a chance to pay for my sin of leaving Hinamizawa. Dad, listen, Oyashiro-sama is going to help us. Let's go back to Hinamizawa. Hinamizawa is the place where we must live. If we don't, not only me, but you might be cursed too. Let's go back to Hinamizawa. That's the only place where we can live. We need to hurry. We need to hurry or Yashiro-sama's power will fade away and my body will be eaten by maggots. Oh no, Yashiro-sama's following me. He's telling me to hurry. He follows me everywhere and keeps telling me to hurry. He keeps apologizing to me for putting his curse on me. He follows me everywhere and keeps apologizing. I'm telling you the truth, I am. Why can't anybody see it? Why can't they see the maggots or Yashiro-sama? Everybody's trying to fool me. I know they can see them too. No, please, stop. I don't want to get another shot.
I
was breathing hard and Miyo was holding my shoulders. I could feel that terrible memory I'd been trying to forget was awakening. The doctors told me that the memory was just my delusion. They told me that since I blamed myself for the divorce, I unconsciously had a desire to blame someone else for it, and I unconsciously connected the desire to the folktale of Yashiro-sama that I read when I was little. I got a drug treatment, received counseling, and waited. I gradually got better, and that proved the things I saw were just a hallucination. The doctors asked my father to consider moving to Hinamizawa if possible. Fortunately, he wanted to change his living environment to heal his pain from his divorce as well. So, we came back to Hinamizawa. After we came back to Hinamizawa, I felt it. I felt it in my bones that this was the place I should live. I also felt Oyashiro-sama's blessing. I definitely felt it. I felt the curse of Oyashiro-sama starting to break. I was free. After I moved here, I went to the clinic in Gogura for a while. The doctors gave me the same poisonous-looking pills, and I kept taking them for a while. The terrible memory gradually became unclear. Whenever I tried to remember it, I could only remember the strong side effects of the pills, and it made me dizzy. That's how I regained my peace. And then I changed my name, Rena. The reason was because my name reminded me of those bad memories. I didn't want to have anything icky in my life anymore. That's why I came up with the idea of taking icky things out. After I took the I of icky out of my name, Rena, there was only Re and Na left. That's how Rena was born. I like that. When I was introduced to my classmates, I told them to call me Rena. Since then, that had been my name. I'm living my new life as Rena. I cut away all the sad things that happened when I was Rena. My father still calls me Rena, but I don't feel bad as long as it's just my father and my relatives. But then, Rena came into my life one day, and she calls me Rena. Because she called me Rena, those colored lights started flickering again. I should stop. I should forget about it. The lights were still flickering.
すみません。私、だいぶ取り乱してました。
小声で何かつぶやいてたわね。落ち着いたならよかったわ。
Judging by Miyo's reaction, I wasn't panicking as badly as I thought I was. But I've probably had those panicked hallucinations several times. If I started screaming and yelling like I once did, they'd take me away to a hospital again for sure.
私は、あの異常な中で、確かにお社様に会ったんです。もちろん、ウジ虫も。信じられませんよね。
Miyo smiled, looking a little confused. I couldn't blame her. I didn't expect her to believe it. I'm sure it was just a strange memory I crafted for myself in my hallucinations. I can't believe I can't trust myself. That's the worst feeling of all.
レナちゃん、まず一つ安心してほしいの。
はい。
レナちゃんが怖がっているタタリ、つまり血の中にいたというウジ虫。それはお社様が言うにはひなみ沢にいる限りは大丈夫なんでしょう？
ええ、そう言ってました。
なら怯えることはないじゃない。安心して。あなたは今ひなみ沢にいる。まあこの図書館は沖宮だけど、このくらいの距離ならお社様も許してくれるわね。血管の内側に何かがうごめいているなんて感じない？
それは、はい。
だから安心して。あなたは今 お社様の戒律をちゃんと守ってる。だから何も恐れなくていいの。だってそうでしょね。
はい。はい。
I didn't know until then that she was such a warm-hearted person. I met many doctors and talked to them about this, but they always ignored me and didn't really listen. All they did was give me a shot of the drug I hated. On the other hand, Miyo didn't deny my story or the existence of Oyashiro-sama. The people in this village whispered behind her back that she was a little crazy. But she was actually a very kind person, I thought.
レナちゃん、私は今の話全部信じるわ。
ありがとうございます。そう言ってくれた人は初めてかもです。
それは私も同じよ。私の話をバカにしないでちゃんと聞いてくれた人はあなたが初めて。
She's lying. Miyo is lying. Because Shion didn't laugh. And listen to her very seriously. But I guess she's just trying to make Rena feel, better.
私たち、いい友達になれそうね。
Miyo smiled, touching my head with hers.
なら、私の秘蔵のファイルとスクラップも貸してあげるわね。本当に本当の門外不出。私以外の誰にも見せる気がなかったんだけど、レナちゃんには特別に読ませてあげてもいい気がするわ。あなたなら、バカにしないでちゃんと読んでくれそうな気がするし。
Is the rest of the chapter gonna be Rena reading through these files and, going insane? She took a few scrapbooks out of her paper bag and handed it to me. Or handed them
ぜ
to
ひ
me.
読んで感想を聞かせてね。あるいはひょっとすると、レナちゃんにしかわからないことなのかもしれない。
Miyo was acting mysteriously. She smiled mischievously and put her index finger on her lips as a sign to keep it a secret. Also, I hear thunder outside. So I kept thinking that it was the game. If my power goes out, that's gonna suck. I hope it doesn't. It doesn't interrupt my stream. But anytime, when she was talking about the maggots, I heard rumbling outside, and I thought, is that the game or is that thunder out? And then I had to take my headphones, at least one, I had to free one ear and kind of keep an ear out. And yeah, I started hearing the rumbling more. I thought it was part of the game and I was like, holy shit. Because as soon as she said something like, I cut my vein open and I saw the maggots pop out, and then bam, I hear rumbling in the distance.
あと、このスクラップ帳と私がそういう研究しているのは内緒よ。
内緒ですか？はい。わかりました。
だって、こんな研究をしているのが連中に知られたら、消された。
She laughed after she said that. They might erase her. That's what she said. And she went missing. She left me her scrapbooks. But that's not all there is to it. It's the way Tomitake-san died. Ooishi said he committed suicide because of a state of excitation caused by some kind of drug. But I know what really happened. I didn't tell Ooishi-san about it. I don't think he'd believe me even if I told him. Without a doubt, Tomitake died trying to get rid of the maggots. It was nothing other than the curse of Oyashiro-sama. To never leave Hinamizawa isn't the only rule of Oyashiro-sama. There are more. He might have broken one of them without knowing it. Ooishi told me. Tomitake was taking pictures with his camera flash on during the sacred ritual dance, and some people got mad at him for it. Did Oyashiro-sama put his curse on Tomitake because he violated a sacred ritual dance? It might be for another reason. Anyway, he died from the curse of Oyashiro without a doubt. Did that mean Oyashiro put his curse on Miyo as well? Investigating the gods is the same as getting close to the gods. It's disrespecting them. But Miyo told me they might get rid of her if they found out about her investigation. By they, she meant humans. Plus, according to her theory, the three families are in conspiracy to revive the faith of Oyashiro-sama. But I can tell by the way Tomitake died that it was an act of the curse. I'm certain about that because I experienced the curse myself. At first glance, that seemed incompatible with those conspiracy theories about human beings. I remember that Ooishi told me something about some kind of drug that can make people commit suicide. So do the three families have a secret drug that can cause the curse of Oyashiro-sama? That's impossible. Plus, I didn't get any shots of a suspicious drug like that. I had a normal life in Ibaraki. I wasn't involved with the Sonozaki family or the Kimiyoshi family. Ooishi asked me for a favor. He asked me to tell him secretly if I saw or heard anything suspicious. It could be about me, Mi-chan, Rika, or anybody in the village. Miyo believed my story about Oyashiro-sama. Now she's gone. Tomitake-san died by doing the same thing I did. Oh no. I don't want to get involved with the curse of Oyashiro-sama. Is this a conspiracy of a group of fanatical cult members, or is it the curse of Oyashiro-sama? Is everything just a set of coincidences, or maybe it's a mixture of conspiracy and the curse? I don't know. Is it the work of humans? Is it the work of humans, the curse, or a coincidence? These are all the questions we've been asking ourselves this whole fucking time. Oh no, even the light of the sunset was making me feel dizzy. When did the sunlight in Hinamizawa get so mean? Miyo told me to keep her investigation secret. I gave her I have her top secret scrapbooks. They might hold the truth about everything. When I realized that, I got scared all of a sudden. I might end up the same way Miyo-san did because of her scrapbooks. If it's a conspiracy, I'll be erased. If it's the curse, I'll be cursed. I should burn the scrapbooks. That's the safest thing to do. But Miyo believed my story. Miyo listened to me without laughing. It'd feel wrong to burn them without taking a look. If it's a conspiracy, I have to expose it. If it's the curse, I have to break it. I shouldn't run away. I should fight. That's right. I decided to fight to seize my happiness. I shouldn't give in to misfortunes. I have to fight. I'm going to get rid of all the things that are trying to ruin my peaceful life. I'm going to read her scrapbooks when I get home. I started walking faster. Oh boy. What a fucking chapter. Holy shit. Let's view the tips. Lunch takeout list, and this looks a little bit like her scrapbook. Attention, Kuroda Mental Clinic. Hello. To get straight to the point, we can assume that this is an acute cause of post-traumatic stress disorder. The patient is subject to tremendous stress because of her parents' sudden divorce and being forced to choose to live with either her mother or her father. Furthermore, the patient firmly believes that she was responsible for her parents' divorce, which further drives her to self-mutilation. This patient's largest shock stems from a sense of betrayal of her own household, which she believed was an absolute safe haven. Henceforth, there is a high possibility that the patient will resort to psychological defense measures to protect her family. For example, she might feel high disdain for any person of the opposite sex who approaches her father. She might feel uncomfortable about having other people in her home. She may also display eccentric behavior in order to keep people away from it. As an example of the latter, there are reported cases of patients unconsciously bringing home garbage. Interesting. It's highly important that the patient remains in close communication with her father. By deepening the communication between the two of them, it will strengthen their family bond and loosen up her anxiety. Since the patient only shows signs of an acute syndrome in this case, there's a very good chance that she'll recover within 3 months with her father's support and proper medication. However, it is common for a patient who seemed to have recovered to have a sudden reoccurrence, a flashback, even after 10 years. Her father is still fairly young, and there's still a chance that he could remarry. However, seeing an unfamiliar member of the opposite sex through remarriage could trigger a flashback in the patient, which may lead to avoidance behavior or hyper-awareness. Before I forget, this is technically a new background, so just real quick. I think this was the hospital one from chapter 4, but just in case, here it is. Please explain this part thoroughly to her father in order for him to understand the recovery process. Should the father decide to remarry, it's recommended that he should hold off in telling the patient until she reaches the age where she's capable of living independently. Also, the cause of the patient's psychosomatic self-mutilating behavior, delusional parasitosis, seems to be its own culture-bound syndrome. The patient blindly believes that leaving her home village will cause a curse, and that this curse was the cause of her parents' divorce. We believe that this is a subconscious defensive mechanism to reduce her mental trauma by shifting the blame from herself to her village's curse. According to the patient's statement, the culture of her home village is extremely strict and exclusive. The patient believes that there is no way to be saved from the curse other than by going back to the village, as the curse will continue as long as she lives in her current environment. Through this, we can see an inclination of schizophrenia, and believe the chances are high that the patient will continue to alter their perceived reality. Schizophrenia, a case where the patient's personalities are reduced, causing altered perceptions of reality and delusions. Her delusion about the maggots dwelling in her blood is a perfect example, and it's also the cause of her psychosomatic self-mutilating behavior. When a delusion involves psychosomatic self-mutilating behavior, it's extremely dangerous. I highly recommend for the father to move back to the village if he's financially capable. Allowing her to live with relatives in the village might also work. If such a strong belief can induce symptoms of such as self-mutilation, then there might be other cases similar to this one. Perhaps prior medical files that document similar culture-bound syndromes may be available at a large medical institution in her local area. It will then be possible to provide better and more accurate mental care for the patient by obtaining these case files. The B5 size letter was the B5 size letter was with a bunch of memos. The following was on the backside of the letter. 1. Chukadon. 3. Shanghai style gomoku yakisoba. 1 large fried rice. Huh? They had Rena's like memo, right? Like her info, and just like, hey, by the way, here's a bunch of stuff that's related to this like very possibly dangerous patient. And then on the back of it all is a lunch takeout list. That's so dumb. Anyway, let's continue. Let's start chapter 8. About homing ability and homesickness. If you interpret homing ability in a broad sense, you can say most animals have a homing ability. It is the same with humans. We like to sleep, rest, and eat at a place where we feel comfortable, namely our homes. Your home is to you what nests are to animals. Therefore, we can say that humans have a homing ability as well. First of all, why do animals need nests? The answer is the same for humans. Sleeping, resting, and eating are the essential actions for survival. At the same time, those actions leave one defenseless as well. That's why you need a safe area where you can be defenseless. Everybody knows that not having this safe area results in a high level of stress. When you move an animal to a new environment, it naturally becomes stressed. When you force a person to live in a foreign land where they aren't comfortable, they become greatly stressed as well. Everybody also knows that this kind of stress is called homesickness. The Japanese don't know much about homesickness. We define it as a mental weakness, and we neglected to treat it for a long period of time. However, homesickness has a very long history. In Europe's Middle Ages, people believed that it wasn't a mental but rather a physical disease. People also believed that out of everyone, the Swiss got the disease the most. The Swiss, you see, were known to be an ethnic group that worked away from home in that era. They lived far away from their homes. There were no telephones at the time, so they couldn't even hear their families' voices for ages and ages. It's easy to imagine that young Swiss workers got homesick while working in a strange land. These Swiss who got homesick wanted to go home, but they couldn't because of their jobs. The conflict made them weak physically and mentally. Some of them went crazy and tried to escape from their reality by committing suicide or running away. The Swiss at the time were very superstitious, and many folk remedies and occult-like treatments to prevent homesickness went around. Since going home was the only treatment, that they must have called it a fatal disease. But it isn't really one, of course. Specifically, homesickness is a sign that a human homing instinct, or it's a sign of that human homing instinct. Your brain desires to go back to your safe area, namely your home. At first, your brain makes you remember the happy memories of your home, and that urges you to go home in a natural way. But when reason stops you from achieving your desire, your brain starts sending unnatural signals to your body. As a result, your body gets weak, and then, in the end, you have to bend. So, homesickness is born. The stronger one's homing instinct is, the stronger their homesickness. The strength of that homing instinct varies from individual to individual, and depends on the environment in which those individuals live. When your home is safe and the environment you live in is dangerous, your homing instinct grows stronger. On the other hand, when the environment you live in is safer than your homing instinct becomes very weak. Safety isn't the only element that affects its strength. Cultural aspects affect it too. The many customs demanding families to return home for major events varies with each region, so your birthplace's culture also alters the strength of your homing instinct. Amongst those regions, the transcendents of Onigafuchi village were believed to have an excessively strong homing instinct. The people of Onigafuchi forbade their fellows from ever leaving. Many believed that this was the effect of the elitism and the sense of purity I already mentioned before. People today still strongly believe that Oyashiro-sama puts his curse on you if you break his rule and abandon the village. This superstition can be interpreted as homesickness. Right, that's what I was getting to mentally. If homesickness is directly proportional to one's homing instinct, then the exaggerated expression, curse, would signify the strength of that homesickness, and also their homing instinct. I can assume that they hated the outside world and created an insular society precisely because of their powerful homing ability. Unfortunately, there's no way to measure the strength of the homing ability that the primitive people of Onigafuchi had. It was so strongly forbidden to leave the village that nobody left long enough to get homesick. However, after the Meiji era, things changed. The sacredness of Onigafuchi dwindled with the efforts of modernization. Many young people started longing to leave the village to get a job. As a result, villagers started venturing outside the village borders. That was when the transcendents of Onigafuchi realized how strong their homing ability was for the first time. The residents of Hinamizawa got extremely homesick. After a while, people started calling this homesickness the curse of Oyashiro-sama. It became rumored that a person who left the village to get a job in a strange land was cursed, that he went crazy and died, and people who had left the village started coming back to either it or the nearby town. Their homesickness and their homing ability were very strong because of their culture. It's reasonable to think that these were cultivated by the unique religion in Hinamizawa, namely the cult of Oyashiro-sama. From the moment they were born, they were taught the rules of Oyashiro-sama. They must have felt guilty about leaving the village unconsciously. As a result, they considered their homesickness to be the curse of Oyashiro-sama. I'm not sure if their homesickness got stronger because of the rules of Oyashiro-sama, or if it made the rules of Oyashiro-sama because their homesickness got stronger. Or if they made the rules. I don't know which came first. I got tired of reading such small print and lay down on the floor on my back. The true identity of the curse of Oyashiro-sama is homesickness? Miyo-san believed my story and she let me read these scrapbooks. That's why I expected to find something interesting. But what it's saying is that the answer to all this homesickness, which many doctors told me so many times at counseling, what it's saying is that the answer to it all is homesickness, which many doctors told me so many times at counseling. I'm a little upset. The word homesickness can't explain the extraordinary experience I had. I saw Oyashiro-sama come down to me from a bright light in the bathroom. I saw the dusky red nasty maggots come out of my blood vessels. The scrapbook doesn't explain any of that. I don't understand how Miyo was going to explain the cloud of maggots. Maybe she didn't have any explanation to begin with. Was it just a delusion? I flipped through one of the other scrapbooks Miyo let me borrow, looking for an explanation of the maggots I saw. Then I found it. It had the exact title I was looking for. About maggots in the curse of Oyashiro-sama. Oh boy. In the Meiji era, a group of villagers were on their way back to Hinamizawa, and they started discussing a rumor about a weird disease. They said that maggots started crawling out of the wounds of a person who left Hinamizawa, and that the maggots ate the person's body from the inside. The Shinto priest of the Furude shrine at the time explained that the weird disease was a sign of Oyashiro-sama's curse. According to tradition, the Shinto priest showed the villagers an ancient scroll, and he told them that the story of the maggots had been passed down through the ages. This is what the scroll said. The world where the ogres came from must be interpreted as the land of death. And the ogres in that land of death had to live their lives while being eaten by maggots. The villagers who are of the ogre's blood had nothing to worry about as long as they lived in Hinamizawa under the protection of Oyashiro-sama. But once they left Hinamizawa, abandoning that protection, the maggots that had been sleeping in the blood of the ogres would start to awaken, and they'd eat their bodies from the inside out. This maggot disease, sacred to the villagers for a while, it scared them. This maggot disease scared the villagers for a while, and they asked the shrine to provide them with protective talismans whenever they had to leave the village for business. This is interesting, as it's similar to the way homesickness was dealt with by the Swiss in the Middle Ages. And also, hey Billy, thanks for stopping by. After the war started, the delusion of the maggots disease faded away, but there remained a custom to send talismans to families that lived away from Hinamizawa. The talismans had the word maggot on them. But the most interesting part about all this is that the residents of Hinamizawa didn't know about the maggot disease until the rumors began. I thought that their unconscious worship of these people... I thought that their unconscious worship made those people think of homesickness as a curse. So this case of the previously unknown maggot disease directly contradicted the research I had done so far. It's natural to think that the group of people who were on their way back to the village were lost in a mass delusion because they strongly believed in the curse, and that Shinto priests took advantage of their state of panic to instill a deeper faith in them. I do believe that is possible, for sure. That bit that they just said. But I'm not fully convinced that that is merely a coincidence that this mass delusion attached with the story is... But I'm not fully convinced that it was merely a coincidence that this mass delusion matched with the story in the old picture scroll. I wondered if it's possible to see maggots in a wound without having the prerequisite knowledge when a person is cursed by Oyashiro-sama. I wish Oyashiro-sama would put his curse on somebody I could study. I'd love to see those maggots come out of someone. Holy fuck. I felt as if Miyo was here and making that request of me. I remember. When she gave me the scrapbook, she said that I might be the only one who could understand them. I felt good just for a moment, because I found out that the maggots weren't a delusion. But at the same time, it destroyed my excuse that it was a delusion. The maggots weren't a delusion, they were there. All of a sudden, my wrist, elbows, inner thighs, and neck started itching. I felt the urge to cut open a blood vessel, but I quietly held it down. I remember that Miyo looked very seriously when I talked about the maggots. She must have thought it was creepy. But so did I. While I was crying because nobody believed me, a part of me didn't want to believe that my body was filled with those creepy things. I think part of me wanted to believe that it was a delusion. But now I know it wasn't. It wasn't a delusion. There are some people who had the same experience. Maggots in the ogre's blood will awaken when you lose the protection of Oyashiro-sama. In other words, they may not awaken under the protection of Oyashiro-sama, but all the villagers still have maggots in them without knowing it. People of demon's blood are people who have the creepy maggots in their bodies. I try not to jump to conclusions and flip the pages again. I unconsciously looked for something related to maggots. About parasites and control of the hosts. The maggots disease made me think about something. It's possible that... Is it possible to say that the extremely strong homesickness of Hinamizawa was an infectious disease caused by some kind of parasite? I'm not trying to connect the maggots they saw with parasites. I'm trying to think about the possibility that their culture, their religion, might be associated with an infectious disease. Many infectious diseases are caused unintentionally by parasites. A parasite's host is literally its home. It wants to live within the host's body for as long as it can. The best way to do that is to coexist with the host without the host knowing it. But some parasites try to control their hosts and use them for prosperity. For example, some parasites have an ability to control their hosts in order to force them to be eaten by a superior host. A typical example is the Dracocolium dendriticum. It uses snails or ants as an intermediate host, and it forces them to move to the upper side of vegetation, so that it's easier for a superior host to consume it. One parasite that controls more complicated animals, called Toxoplasma gondii. It uses mice as intermediate hosts, with its superior hosts being cats. This parasite makes a mouse lose its fear of cats in order to increase its chances of getting eaten, so that the parasite can live within a cat instead. There are parasites that choose hosts at random. The rabies virus is commonly known for that. And it lives and breeds in the brain of a host, and it moves into the host's saliva through the salivary glands. It makes the host extremely aggressive in order to make it bite things randomly, so that it can move into other hosts through the saliva. That's what rabies does. Many parasites have a similar ability to control hosts to their benefit. The examples I used above are about parasites that move into other hosts to prosper. But I think there must be some kind of parasite that controls its host in order to have a comfortable environment in which to live. I want to try to connect this theory to the abnormal homing ability and homesickness of the Onigafuchi residents. Let's say there's some kind of parasite that exists in Hinamizawa, and it lives within all of the villagers' bodies. For the parasite, Hinamizawa is the most comfortable environment to live in. So it gives the host a strong homing ability in order to make them stay in Hinamizawa. Furthermore, it causes the host to get homesick whenever they ignore this homing ability and try to leave. Parasites need hosts in which to live. It's convenient for them if their hosts build a community in the environment where it feels comfortable. This theory makes it easier for me to explain the mysteries I described earlier. So, are they trying to imply that the quote-unquote ogres they encountered were possibly larvae or some kind of disease that came from the swamp that maybe the old villagers might have used for some reason? Maybe someone bathed in the swamp and it came from there? Perhaps. I don't know. The Transcendents of Onigafuchi knew of the existence of this parasite. They knew that as hosts to the parasite, they couldn't live outside the village. That's why they created a culture and rules that prohibited contact with the outside world. It also explains why people acted so abnormal during the dam conflict. So, the ogres that came out of the swamp of the legend of Oyashidosuma can be interpreted as the mass spread of the parasite. Oh my god. The story about the ogres attacking the villagers must be a metaphor for the behavior of the infected villagers who were controlled by the parasite, right? Either that, or it could be interpreted as a metaphor for like a wave of sickness, maybe a plague that hit the village. This theory is too crazy. I should have just laughed about it, but I felt bad for Miyo, so I decided not to. Hinamizawa is controlled by a parasite? You could use that theory to explain how the maggots came out of me. I felt a little bit dizzy. I was so confused, and a part of me thought it was ridiculous, and another part of me thought it was more convincing than any curse. But Miyo was probably erased because she wrote these scrapbooks. If so, the contents of these scrapbooks must be something they can't ignore. They try to get all of her scrapbooks and consign them to oblivion. What if they notice some of her scrapbooks are missing? I felt a chill running through my spine. I have to keep it a secret that I have these scrapbooks, and I'll have to try to understand more about their contents. Remember Miyo told me about the three families, told me that the three families are behind the series of mysterious deaths, and that they're trying to resurrect the cult of Oyashiro-sama. According to the theory I just read, the parasites must be trying to maintain the current environment of Hinamizawa. Also, I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure while this still is a pink text in front of us, I think it might be a darker shade of pink compared to the previous pink that was used before with Rena. Whenever Rena used to speak before, it was like a brighter kind of, more vibrant pink, and now it's a little bit more red. It's getting darker. That happened a little bit last chapter when I checked. I think this might just be metaphorically or just a visual change that Rena is becoming a little bit different. Anyway, according to the theory I just read, the parasites must be trying to maintain the current environment of Hinamizawa. The healthiest environment for it is a completely closed village, just like the primitive Onigafuchi. It must be very comfortable for the parasite if no hosts go outside the village. They don't even like that villagers often leave the village to go shopping. That means the parasite would try to goad the hosts into resurrecting the cult of Oyashiro-sama. I remember there was an article in the scrapbook saying that the ogre's blood runs thickest in the three families. That would mean that they have a larger amount of the parasite in them than the other villagers, and that they're under its control. The three families seem to be planning to bring the village back to the Onigafuchi era. Reviving the Watanagashi festival after the dam conflict can be interpreted as their desire to revive the faith that had started to fade away in the Meiji era. And now that I think about it, remember, the original Watanagashi festival was a dance where a person would be tortured and then consumed. Their guts would be strewn about, and then everyone watching the festival would eat the person. There are many diseases that come about from consuming another being or another creature, another person sometimes, where I believe if I recall, it's believed that if you do eat another person, you can get like some sort of disease from eating them. I'm trying to remember. I know that if you eat monkeys, for example, you can get very sick. If you eat monkey brains, I believe you can also get very, very sick. I can't remember the name of the illness. So what if, as a way to spread this disease or this like parasite to the people, they did it through the Watanagashi festival, where everyone in the village would come together, they would eat someone, possibly someone infected, and then that would reinforce the infection in some way, shape, or form. Anyway. The three families, especially the Sonozaki family, have a great influence over the region and the public organizations. What's going on here? I thought this would be a poorly written theory, but the pieces fit together one after another. I've never played a jigsaw puzzle as crazy as this. I felt my brain swirling due to the absurd theory. A part of me thought this was ridiculous, and another part of me thought I might be about to expose an unbelievable truth. When I tried to look into the center of it, I felt as if I was going to fall into a whirlpool and drown. I'll have to devote myself to reading more seriously. There must be some truth to this. It caused misfortune and made my life miserable after I moved to Ibaraki. I might be able to find the truth, including the cause of my parents' divorce and my desperate behavior. Right then, I heard a knock on the door, all of a sudden scaring me. I hid the scrapbooks under a cushion.
Rena, 電話が来てるぞ。
Is it
電
Ooishi?
話？こんな時間に？誰だろう？
本屋さんからだぞ。本の取り寄せとか頼んだのか？沖宮書房の大石さんって人からだ。
It is Ooishi. Oh my god. Ooishi, I believe, did the same thing to Keiichi. I opened the windows, but all they let in was the heat and the cries of the
あじい
cicadas.
な。
味いいね。
It was break time between classes, but we couldn't really get any rest. Mion and I leaned on our desks, exhausted by the heat. The younger kids sure are tough, considering how the heat wasn't bothering them at all. They were running around the classroom despite the temperature.
やっぱりさ、都会の学校だと教室にもクーラーとか入ってるわけ？
そんなことねえぞ。あるのはせいぜい職員室ぐらいだな。
う
Oh
わ
man, that sucks.
それは羨ましいね。生徒みんなで職員室を襲って占拠とかしないの？
その辺の発想が実にミオン臭い。ああ。
Yeah. I didn't have the energy to laugh. Mion and I stopped talking and used our notebooks to fan ourselves. I looked at the empty seat nearby. It was Rena's. Rena didn't come to school today. She called and told Chia-sensei she couldn't come because she's sick.
レナのやつ、最近元気ないよな。
だね。暑さにやられたのかもね。
なあ、本気で暑さでやられたと思ってるのか？
そう思ってるけど。
例の一件がさ、やっぱりじわじわと来てるんじゃないのか？
かもね。それに暑さも加わって、夏バテでも起こしたんじゃないかな。
I can't even imagine how distressing it was for her to commit a murder, dismember the bodies, and get caught by her friends. We took each other's hands at that place and we united. All of us believed that we had that we had closed the case there and regained our peace. But was that as easy for Rena? God damn it! But was that as easy for Rena as it was for us? She must have not quite recovered yet.
おじさんはみんなで楽しく遊んでれば、そのうち元気になると思ってたんだけどね。そこまで心の傷が浅くなかったってことかな。
こういう時さ、どうしたらレナを元気づけられるかな？
If anything, I'm more surprised that they're kind of over the fact that Rena committed a murder, you know? Like, imagine if you had a group of, like, friends. You visit one of them, and you happen to open their fridge, and in their fridge, you see 2 corpses that have been chopped up, that have been dismembered, and that are just rotting in their fridge. Most normal people would feel some kind of discomfort, some kind of distrust amongst, you know, this group of people, or at least towards that individual. If a friend of yours committed murder, and you then help them get away with it, I don't know how some people might be, I don't know, able to cope with that, if that makes sense. Because again, a normal person would see all this, and they would kind of be like, this person could probably kill me at any moment. Fuck, I am scared of this person, or something. Yet, here they are, like, pretending like nothing happened. They all said that we're gonna do that. They're like, we're just gonna, you know, we're gonna forget about today. That's it. And they all kind of did that, but I'm not sure how the fuck they would be able to.
多分、ほっとくのが一番じゃないかな。
おいおい、そんなのでいいのかよ。俺たち仲間だろ？
ほら、ホームシックってあるじゃない？
Oh.
あれもね、ちょっと寂しいからって言って、実家に電話なんかかけちゃうと、一気に発症しちゃうらしいよ。寂しい時はぐっと耐えて、例えばスポーツにでも打ち込んで気分転換を図るのが一番なんだってさ。
気分転換させてやりたくても、あいつ最近部活に加わらないし。
レナはどうか知らないけどさ、人には甘えたい欲ってのがあるんだよ。そばに支えてくれる人や同情してくれる人がいると甘えたくなる欲。慰めてくれる人が現れるとさ、際限なく甘えちゃうことってない？
どうだろうな。
際限なく甘えるってことは、相手の同情をより深く得ようとするってこと。そうすると、ケイちゃんは慰めてるつもりなのに、相手はどんどん落ち込んでいっちゃうことがあるんだよね。慰められて甘えられる。これに味を占めると、不幸に酔うのが癖になる。レナもその辺分かってるから、わざと一人になろうとしてるんじゃない？慰めや甘えが目的だったら、私たちのそばにいて涙を流せば済むわけだし。
じゃあ、落ち込んでるレナをどう励ませばいいんだよ。
女の心情としては、辛さを励ましてくれるより、忘れさせてくれる方が嬉しいね。
慰めるな、励ますな。なんだよ、お手上げじゃないかよ。
慰めるな、励ますなは、心理カウンセラーの鉄則だって知ってる？結局、 心の傷ってのは自分で治すようにできてる。周りの人が治したとしても、それは本当の完治じゃない。だから、レナが自分で元気になるのを私たちは見守るしかないんだよ、きっと。
You know, like I've been playing through, these chapters, and a lot of like the stuff they've talked about, not the murder shit, but a lot of the psychological stuff has been affecting like individuals that I know personally. And it's kind of interesting being given this outside perspective, or this little reminder of some of these psychological, not tricks, but like the way psychology works in general. So it's kind of interesting to be told this one specific like bit of dialogue that we just read. It's very relatable.
理屈じゃ理解できるが、なんだか薄情な気がして好きになれねえな。
I clasped my hands behind the back of my head, looking at the ceiling. Mion laughed.
それだけレナのことを心配してくれるケイちゃんが身近にいるなら、レナ立ち直れるよ。
近くにいるだけでか？うさんくさいな。
ケイイチにだってできることがありますですよ。
Rika spoke up. I wondered how long she'd been listening to our conversation.
俺にもできることがあるのか？
レナが話したいと思った時や、打ち明けたいと思った時に、静かに聞いてあげることなのです。
Also, hey Moon, thanks for stopping by. Yeah, I think I had it where only one person can redeem Feliz Jueves. But, on the kick side, you should be able to redeem one as well.
聞くだけでいいのか？励まさなくていいのかよ。
ケイちゃん、打ち明けるだけで心が軽くなるもんだよ。静かに耳を傾けるのが何よりも嬉しい時ってある。
ミーの言う通りなのですよ。レナが話したいと思った時、いつでも話しかけられる場所にいてあげるのも、きっと仲間として大切なことなのだと思いますです。
Mion and Rika were absolutely right. I was going to pat Rena on her shoulder and tell her to cheer up when I saw her next, but now I know that would have been one-sided on my part. Rena doesn't want to feel down herself. She wants to cheer up if at all possible. If I cheered her up irresponsibly, she'd be very disappointed because she'd think that I didn't understand her pain.
そうだな。俺、ちょっと人の心ってやつを理解しようとしてなかったな。レナを励ましたいのは、俺の欲求であって、レナの求めることじゃない。ありがとな、二人とも。俺、ひょっとすると、今日まで何か勘違いをしてたかもしれないぜ。
On that day, I thought I cheered her up, but I started to doubt if I had reached her heart. I might have just been dragging her someplace where I wanted her to go. I wasn't on her side in the real sense of the term. All of a sudden, Rika patted my
ケイ
head.
イチは一番のレナの味方ですよ。
And yes, cute girls are very cute. Like here we have Rika patting Keiichi on the head. Oh. She gets close to us. Oh god.
それは疑わなくて大丈夫なのです。
俺、また考え事を口に出しちまってたのか？
レナの心には届いてるよ。ケイちゃんはあの日、とても強い力をレナに与えたんだからさ。いやー、でもさ、よくよく思い出すと、すっごい恥ずかしいこと言ってたよね。
Weird footsteps from the hallway and everybody started to get back to their desks.
お待たせしました。それでは委員長、号令起立。
We didn't have a club meeting that day because Rena wasn't around. That worked out for me, because I had an errand to run. It wasn't a big errand. My mom wanted me to use her point card to get some detergent. I didn't see the point of going all the way to the store just to get some detergent, but my mom told me to go because she's busy helping my dad with his work. I started walking towards the shopping center. I noticed someone was watching me hiding behind a distant tree. Oh. Is this one? No. No, I doubt it. I wonder who could do such a mischievous thing. I stared at them to find out who it was, at which point they emerged.
レナじゃねえか。
Are you feeling better now? I was about to say that, but I swallowed the words. Somehow, Rena looked very serious.
どうしたんだ？
Rena put her index finger to her lips, told me to be quiet, looked around carefully, and beckoned for me to come over. I had no idea what was going on, but I followed her instructions, shut my mouth, and ran to her. Rena gestured for me to squat down to hide in the shadows of the bush. I didn't know why I had to do that, but I could ask her the questions later. I just followed her orders for now. Rena looked like she was making sure no one was following her. If it was Miyo, she'd do something like this just to fool me as a joke, but I know Rena doesn't do things like this for fun. I had no idea what kind of situation I got myself into, but I could feel how tense it was, and I made myself as small as I could.
もういいよ。ごめんね。
The tone of her voice made me relax a little.
どうしたってんだよ、一体。
多分私、誰かに最近後をつけられているの。
なんだって？
Who would follow her? When I thought about it, I realized how stupid that question
まさか
was.
警察かよ。
Rina Mamiya and Teppei Hojo. Two people disappeared. Even though they were awful human beings, the police had to investigate if they found out that they'd gone missing. It probably wouldn't be difficult to find out that Rina had often been to Rena's house. But it should be okay. As long as they don't find those bags, it should be okay.
警察なのか、警察じゃないのかはわからないけれど、渡流しの夜以降、誰かにずっと見られている気がするの。
どういうことだよ。
Once I asked that question, Rena stared directly at me with a blank expression. Her eyes told me as though they were evaluating me. She stared at me as if she was assessing whether I was worth talking about. Whether I was worth talking to about something very important. Rena squeezed her own wrist tightly, then started talking in a whisper.
話してもいいけど、誰にも内緒にできる？
ああ、もちろんだぜ。レナがそうしろってんなら、誰にも喋らない。
圭一くんなら信用できるよ。連中はひょっとすると、ミオさんのスクラップ帳を探しているのかもしれないの。
Accidentally skipped ahead, but she smiled and looked around one more time. They might be looking for Miyo's scrapbook.
ミオさん？で、ああ、看護師の高野さんのことか。あと、スクラップ帳って何のことだ？
秘密の捜査になっているって言ってたから、多分、圭一くんは知らないよね。高野美代さん、殺されたんだって。
いつ？
She told me to be quiet again. I lowered my voice and let her continue.
綿流しの夜、私たちは美代さんと、あと、富武さんに会ったよね。あの直後に、二人が襲われたんだって。富武さんは、お社様のたたりにあって、喉をかきむしって死んだ。美代さんは、岐阜の山中で焼き殺されていたと言ってたの。
それ、本当かよ。そんなの誰も知らないぞ。
うん。それは、警察が伏せて捜査をしてるからなの。ひなみ沢村連続開始事件は、今年で5年目になっちゃうでしょ。だから、変に騒がれたくないんで、事件を公にしていないんだって。
なるほど。秘密捜査なのは分かったが、レナはそんな話、どこで聞いたんだよ。
内緒だよ。私、実は、大石っていう沖宮署の刑事さんと連絡を取り合っているの。その人に教えてもらった。
どうして大石って人がレナに？
さあ、ちょっとそこはわからない。彼が言うには、私なら信用できそうだからって言うんだけどね。
I was dumbfounded to hear all this, but I knew she wasn't lying. If it was Mion, she'd be sticking her tongue out by now, but Rena wouldn't make a joke out of something like this.
ミオさんが殺された理由は、多分彼女の研究のせいだと思うの。ミオさんがこの村の歴史とか民族学とか、そういうのを熱心に調べてたってのは知っている？
なんとなくは聞いたことある。
Takano was interested in the occult and the mysterious things. Remember, Mion once told me that she was studying the village's legends of man-eating ogres out of
彼
curiosity.
女は多分その研究の中でこの村に関するある重要な秘密を知ってしまったの。あるいは彼女はそんなにも確信には踏み入ってなかったのかもしれないけど、そうは思われなかったんだろうね。
ちょっと待て。この村の秘密ってなんだよ？
私はミオさんのスクラップ帳をほんの数冊借りて読んだだけ。でも彼女が特に大事にしていた秘蔵の数冊だから、かなり重要なことが記してあったと思う。だから多分ミオさんが至ろうとしていたことに8割方ぐらいは近づいていると思うの。でもあまりに突拍子もなくて、私にはまだ信じられない。ミオさんの想像が正しいかどうか検証してる段階なの。
で、何なんだ一体？秘密を知ると殺されるっていう、この村の秘密ってのは。
I love how Keiji's just asking, so what's the secret that could get you killed? Can you tell me? I gasped the moment those words left my mouth. If Rena told me, I might get killed too.
ケイチ君にはまだ全部話したくない。確証が持てたら話すね。だってそれくらいに途方もない、とんでもない話だから。
確証ってなんだよ？
例えば予備知識のない内訳については、私自らがその存在を検証できているけど、他にもたくさん未検証のことがあるの。それらを埋めていかないと、私ですらにわかには信じられない。
Maggots. I was totally lost now and I wanted to ask her some questions, but I decided not to cut in. It was so hot outside. But Rena held her arms as if she was cold.
レナ、俺はいつだってお前の味方なんだからな。俺だけは信用してくれて構わない。
ありがとう。
Keiichi sounds like me. My
その
god.
一言がすごい嬉しい。
From her expression alone, I could tell that she really meant it. I could also tell that she was involved in something very big, and that she felt lonely because she couldn't tell anybody else about it. I had to be on her side while she was going through a difficult time.
私とね、今日ここで出会ったことは内緒にした方がいいと思うの。私と接触があったことが知られたら、ケイチ君にも危害が及ぶかもしれないから。
わかった。俺に何か協力できることはないのかよ？
今はない。でも協力をお願いできることが分かっただけで、今の私には心強いよ。最後には頼らせてね。
おう、任せとけ。
し、車が来る。
Rena pushed my head into the bush. I went along with it and crouched down even lower in the bushes. We stayed quiet for a while and I could hear a car coming closer. After a while, a white van passed by. I was surprised at her hearing. She heard the car coming when it was still far off in the distance.
今の車、ナンバー見えた？
いや、ごめん。見えなかった。
私もちょっと見えなかったけど、多分さっきと同じナンバーの車だと思うの。
その、レナを尾行しているとかいう連中か？
多分。普段車なんか通らない道で、今日は何度も追い上げられるの。その度に、私は隠れてやり過ごしているからいいんだけど。
そいつらなのか？高野さんたちを殺して、レナが持ってるスクラップ帳を狙っているという連中は。
多分。
I don't blame her for not being able to believe what's going on, because this is really crazy. Takano uncovered something really significant through her studies. The people who want that information hidden found out about it, and they killed her on the night of the Watanagashi, copying the curse of Oyashiro-sama. They were looking for the scrapbooks, the fruit of her research, and Rena has them. That's why they're trying to kill Rena?
じゃあレナの家が危ないってことはないのか？
大丈夫。スクラップ帳はゴミ山の私の隠れ家に隠してある。お父さんが不安だけど、何も知らないからこそ何も危害が及ばないかもしれない。圭一くんが言わなくても顔に書いてあるよ。突拍子もない話でとても信じられない。でしょ？
I wanted to deny it, but it felt bad to lie. I remained silent in the affirmative.
それが当然の反応。私だってミオさんのスクラップ帳を読み始めた最初はなんだこりゃって思って全然信じられなかったもの。すべてに目を通してようやく何かの筋が見えてきたんだもん。
すまん。もちろんレナの味方になりたいのは本心だ。でも話が全然見えないんでどう助けてやればいいかわかんないんだ。
話せば圭一くんの身にも危険が降りかかるよ。
レナにはすでに降りかかってるんだろ？ならおあいこだぜ。気にするな。
わかった。話す。多分ミオさんたちを殺したのはひなみ沢御三家。もっとはっきり言ってしまえばみーちゃんの家である園崎本家。
どうして？
Oh my god.
圭一くんも過去の連続開始事件は知ってるよね。
And also, hey everyday Alex, thanks so much for stopping by over on the kick side.
ああダム戦争の時の村の旧敵ばかりが毎年犠牲になっていくっていうあれだろ？
この連続開始事件はダム戦争の生産のようなものなの。村の裏切り者を片付けることによって本当の意味でダム戦争を終わらせようとする。
確かにそう見えないことはないよな。誰もがはっきりと口にはしないがうすうすと園崎家の仕業だと疑ってるみたいな話は聞いたことあるぜ。
でも裏切り者を制裁するなら別に綿流しの場にこだわらなくてもいいんじゃない？毎年たたりで一人鬼隠しで一人なんてスローペースで殺す必要はない。そうでしょ？
I'd never heard the word steaming away before, but Rena clearly thought they had some kind of creepy, significant meaning, so I decided not to cut in.
つまりこれらの連続開始事件は綿流しの祭りに神聖性を取り戻そうとする意志があるの。もっと踏み込んで言うと明治以降に失われた鬼ヶ淵村の神聖性を取り戻すための段階的イベント。彼らは最終的には太古の昔にそうだったような原理的なお社様信仰を復活させることを目的としている。
お社様信仰？古出神社のことか？
そう。古出神社って崇められていると思う？お年寄りの人は敬っているけど、それだけだよね。子供たちは境内を遊び場くらいにしか思ってないし、その神聖性は失われている。それがダム戦争をきっかけに蘇ったの。彼らはそれをお社様信仰を復活させるいい機会だと捉えた。
ってことはつまりお社様信仰の狂信者たちが裏で暗躍しているってことか？
そういうこと。そもそもお社様信仰は御三家によって管理されていた。だから御三家には現代にも脈々とお社様信仰を復活させなければならないという至上目的が受け継がれているの。それを思えば御三家がダム戦争中に村を一丸にまとめたり、廃れかけていたお社様を引き合いに出し、古出神社にわざわざ同盟事務所を設けた理由も透けて見えてくる。
じゃあひなみ沢村連続開始事件ってのは いや、お社様を信仰する狂信的な集団の仕業。なら待てよ。どうして高野さんが殺されなきゃならないんだ？
それは御三家が鬼ヶ淵村と呼ばれた太古からずっと隠してきたこの村のある重大な秘密に関係があるの。それを暴かれるとお社様という神の神聖性が失われる。
So, before it continues, I'm going to guess that at the bottom of Onigafuchi swamp, there lies maybe a cave, or maybe there's a connection, maybe there's a way to get to some sort of like underground residence. Where inside, and this is just like the most hyperbolic, the most absurd kind of theory you can have. I'm going to guess that there is some chamber deep beneath the village, possibly tied to Onigafuchi swamp. And that within this chamber, within this, I don't know, inside of this location underneath the village, again, this is all just a guess, there's some chamber where Oyashiro-sama technically quote-unquote lives. Remember, he's supposed to be this god for the village. But what if he really was just like this giant parasite? A literal like giant worm or larva or beetle or maggot or something. Right? Some giant creature that lives underneath the village. That just so happens to have its hosts, its children within the bodies of those that live inside of, well, Hiramizuwa. This is, of course, a very far-fetched theory, but I'm assuming that's where she's going to get, or like that's what she's trying to get to. Maybe, I don't know, we'll see.
だから彼らはミオさんの研究が確信に近づいたことを知り、消したの。
その重大な秘密ってのは何なんだ？それを知ると俺も狙われるってんだろうけど、上等だぜ。
だからそれはまだ言いたくない。
God damn it. What's the secret? I want to know. I don't want to tell you yet.
私自身が10割の確証を得るまで言いたくない。多分今ここで話しても圭一君は耐えきれなくなって笑い出してしまうに違いないもの。
おいおい、俺がそんな奴に見えるかよ。
もう少し時間が欲しいの。あまりの事実に私ですら受け入れきれていないの。だからもう少し時間を欲しいの。お願い。
わかった。
今日ここで話したことは誰にも喋っちゃダメだよ。みーちゃんとリカちゃん、もちろんさとこちゃんにもダメ。
わかったよ。
じゃあ圭一君はもう行って。私はもう少しあたりを伺ってから行く。用心に過ぎるということはないからね。
Rena ducked low in the bushes and moved away. I was left alone there. The cries of the cicadas surrounded around me, making it seem as if I was alone there the whole time. I started walking, still dumbfounded. In the end, Rena didn't tell me the secret because she was afraid of putting me in danger. But she told me clearly that there are people who want to resurrect the cult of Oyashiro-sama, and that they're among the 3 families that control the entire village. They orchestrated the series of mysterious deaths for that purpose, and they killed Takano because she got too close to the secret they wanted to hide. Rena met Takano and happened to obtain the scrapbooks in which Takano wrote about her research. Rena still can't believe the secret written within the scrapbook just because it's too crazy. Hey, come on, Rena. You're kidding me, right? It's like one of those comic book stories. A mysterious occult group is plotting a conspiracy. I mean, it's not even funny. It's not funny even if it's a joke. But Rena is right about one thing. Even if this is true, it's really hard to believe. I understand why Rena wanted to wait to tell me the secret. Maybe she was just fooled by Takano-san, but Takano was murdered for real. So is it also true that someone is following Rena, looking for the scrapbooks? I remember, Rena said Rena said that a white van was following her. You can see white vans anywhere. I bet there are a lot in this village alone. She might just be oversensitive to everything right now. Rena hasn't recovered from the shock since that day. That's probably why she got the idea into her head that the police or someone else is coming after her. I didn't cut in while she was talking. I think I did the right thing. If I had said that it was ridiculous or something to her face, Rena wouldn't have trusted me ever again. At that point, however, I gasped. A white van was parked on the side of the street. I wasn't sure if this was the same car that passed by earlier since I didn't see the plate number. But the number of people in the car and the ambience of it was similar to the one earlier. And of course, new background. I don't think we've seen this one. But you can barely see like a path there. Yeah. And there's one other thing that looks suspicious about it. There was no reason to park here. It was on a small road in the middle of the woods. There is nothing around here. No traffic lights, no vending machines, no public phones. I probably wouldn't notice it under ordinary circumstances, but I felt something was wrong. And once I noticed how odd it was definitely suspicious. There were 4 men in work uniforms in the white van. The driver was smoking a cigarette, but the other men were just sitting there doing nothing. If they wanted to take a break or have a smoke, they could have chosen a better place than here. It was possible that they stopped because they had to go to the bathroom really badly, but it didn't seem that way either. They didn't look as comfortable or relaxed like they would if they were taking a break. They looked like they were waiting for something to happen. There was a deep tension in that car. Could they possibly be waiting for Rena? No way. I didn't see anybody walking around here. This road is a back road. Nobody really uses this road, let alone by car. But it's impossible. I felt bad for Rena to even think about it, but this must be something that she got into her head because she's feeling victimized or something. She must be imagining things because she's still nervous from when her friends caught her in the act of killing Rena and Teppei.
Nii-chan.
I heard someone say that when I passed by the van. He couldn't mean me. He didn't even know who I was. So I assumed he was talking to one of the other people in the car. I pretended I didn't hear him and kept walking by, and then he said it again. And honked the horn as well.
兄ちゃん、すまんね。
There's no portrait for this person.
学校の帰りかいね。
He had a strong accent similar to that of the older villagers. He must live here, but I didn't know him. I could tell he didn't know me either because he didn't call me by my name.
はい、そうですけど。
兄ちゃん、学校からこの道をずっと歩いてきたんで。ちょうど文房具屋の角を曲がって。
そうですけど。何か？
They were probably lost, I thought. This village has many small turns and you can easily get lost when you try to take a shortcut. So they must have been waiting for someone to ask for directions. But then he said something disturbing.
兄ちゃんさ、この道の途中で女の子に会わんかったかいね。
え、え？
白い帽子に白い服を着た女の子なんよ。紫のリボンもついとん。会わんかったかいね。
They were definitely talking about Rena. Oh.
いえ。
Make it any more obvious, why don't you, Keiichi? Did you see a girl, by the way? One that fits the description of one of your closest friends? No. Never.
会ってないです。
Jeez. I wasn't ready to hear them ask that. Rather, I was scared. That's why my voice got all shaky. Up until that point, I couldn't believe Rena's story. I thought it was ridiculous. I actually laughed, if only to myself. That's why I wasn't ready at all. My heart was beating fast and I was sweating all over. I immediately answered no, I didn't, but it might have sounded like an obvious lie. The driver stared into my eyes. He looked like he was trying to figure out if I was lying or not, and my legs started to shake. I felt like a frog under the glare of a snake and I couldn't move a muscle for a while. But then the same amount... but I think the same went for those men too. They were clearly a suspicious group, and they had just asked a villager about a girl out of the blue. anybody would get suspicious. And I was right. The man broke the ice and started making excuses before I even asked him why he wanted to know about the girl.
ああ、そんな深い意味はないんで。さっき女の子を追い抜いたのによ。来たのが男の子だったから、あれと思っただけなんで。
And also, hey Aru, thanks for stopping by over on the Twitch side.
そうですか。
Yeah, we were just wondering if you two were, you know, doing something.
忘れてえな。ごめんな、兄ちゃん。うちらもう行くんて。
It's funny though, they're like, please forget about it. Sorry for the trouble, little bro. Anyway, we're gonna go. The man started the engine and drove away. After they left, I saw nothing. That's right, nothing. There was no reason why they had to park here. So, were they really waiting for Rena? Oh no, is the chapter end? It is. Oh my god. Lunch takeout list too. Oh boy. Let's go to view the new tip. Lunch takeout list 2. But yeah, like, again, like, this book looks just like the one that Takano gave us. So we'll see. Furthermore, it's important that we closely monitor her father, since he has also suffered. Actually, you know what? Hold on. Let me do this. Let me load. Let's do this real quick. I normally don't do this, but let's read the lunch takeout list again, and then the takeout list 2 once more, like back to back. So, attention Kuroda Mental Clinic. Hello. To get straight to the point, we can assume that this is an acute case of post-traumatic stress disorder. The patient is subject to tremendous stress because of her parents' sudden divorce, and being forced to choose to live with either her mother or her father. Furthermore, the patient firmly believes that she was responsible for her parents' divorce, which further drives her to self-mutilation. The patient's largest shock stems from a sense of betrayal of her own household, which she believed was an absolute safe haven. Henceforth, there is a high possibility that the patient will resort to psychological defense measures to protect her family. For example, she might feel high disdain for any person of the opposite sex who approaches her father. She might feel uncomfortable about having other people in her home. She may also display eccentric behavior in order to keep people away from it. As an example of the latter, there are reported cases of patients unconsciously bringing home garbage. It is highly important that father. By deepening the communication between the two of them, it'll strengthen their family bond and loosen up her anxiety. Since the patient only shows signs of an acute syndrome in this case, there is a very good chance that she'll recover within 3 months with her father's support and proper medication. However, it's common for a patient who seemed to have recovered to have a sudden recurrence, a flashback, even after 10 years. Her father is still fairly young, and there is still a chance that he could remarry. However, seeing an unfamiliar member of the opposite sex through remarriage could trigger a flashback in the patient, which may lead to avoidance behavior or hyper-awareness. Please explain this part thoroughly to the father in order for him to understand the recovery process. Should the father decide to remarry, it's recommended that he should hold off in telling the patient until she reaches the age where she's capable of living independently. Also, the cause of the patient's psychosomatic self-mutilating behavior, delusional parasitosis, seems to be its own culture-bound syndrome. The patient blindly believes that leaving her home village will cause a curse, and that this curse was the cause of her parents' divorce. We believe this is a subconscious defensive mechanism to reduce her mental trauma by shifting the blame from herself to her village's curse. According to the patient's statement, the culture of her home village is extremely strict and exclusive. The patient believes that there is no way to be saved from the curse other than by going back to the village, as the curse will continue as long as she lives in her current environment. Through this, we see an inclination of schizophrenia and believe the chances are high that the patient will continue to alter their perceived reality. Schizophrenia, a case where the patient's personalities are reduced, causing altered perceptions of reality and delusions. Her delusions about the maggots dwelling in her blood is a perfect example, and it's also the cause of her psychosomatic self-mutilating behavior. When a delusion involves psychosomatic self-mutilating behavior, it's extremely dangerous. I highly recommend for the father to move back to the village if he's financially capable. Allowing her to live with relatives in the village might also work. If such a strong belief can induce symptoms such as self-mutilation, then there might be other cases similar to this one. Perhaps prior medical files that document similar culture-bound syndromes may be available at a large medical institution in her local area. It'll then be possible to provide better and more accurate mental care for the patient by obtaining these case files. And then the lunch on the back. But now, furthermore, it is important that we closely monitor her father, since he has also suffered mental shock from the divorce and has been trying hard to take care of the patient. There's a strong possibility that he may develop an induced delusional disorder. As a first step of mental care, one should listen to the patient's story carefully without denying it. That's the most basic of basics. However, when the patient and the listener are related, it's easy for the listener to become deeply influenced by the patient's delusions. Additionally, delusional parasitosis is widely known to make people highly impressionable, and the influence sometimes can spread throughout a whole community. Therefore, even if several people claim to acquire a parasitic infection, it doesn't necessarily prove the existence of a parasite. Some of the phone calls to the healthcare centers for the extermination of pests are nothing but a mass delusion. Since the subject matter of the delusion in this case is extremely rabid, the patients might harm or even kill each other in abnormal ways, believing this to be the treatment for the disease. They might also give up hope and commit suicide together in the worst case. Huh. This influential delusional disorder, otherwise known as shared psychotic disorder, shows a particularly strong possibility of influencing close companions. Anyone who is going to contact the patients must be made to understand that the patients are under medical treatment and must be warned not to be influenced by the patient's delusions. Individuals who are likely to be easily influenced are the patient's family members and people who deeply care about the patients, such as boyfriends or girlfriends. In other words, what if Rena is just having hyper-delusions? These notes that she's been reading are increasing those delusions. And now she's influencing other people in her life who are close to her, such as Keiichi. I love how the game does this shit. And it does it all the fucking time. It'll be like, hey, here's something cool going on in the series. Now, here's why it's bad. Or like, it really does love to give you a lot of red herrings. It loves to drive you to kind of like think a certain way. You're like, okay, Rena's reading about the background of Hinamizawa, of when it was called Onigafuchi, what's going on with these people. And what she's specifically reading is like, oh, they're possibly influenced by some kind of parasite. And then she talks to Keiichi about it. And then immediately after you get a tip basically saying, hey, by the way, people that are like schizos will possibly have like delusions, and they will try to influence those people close to them that these delusions are real. So Ryukishi loves to make you think one way, then immediately throws something at you that makes you question everything that you've just read. And that's what makes Higurashi so far very, very, very good. But anyway, I think this is possibly a good stopping point for tonight. So let's go ahead and swap on over to the ending screen real quick.